Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of me showing you things that I've made. This is a painting I made. It's one of the biggest paintings I've ever made in my life. I used a mop to make part of it. I used charcoal, I used oil paint, I used acrylic paint, I used pencils, I used pens, I used Sharpies, I used fancy art Sharpies. I forget the name of them. Everything but collage, I think, I used on this one. This is my study in loss. Study and loss. I made this painting in 2022. In my life, I've lost everything that I've owned a few times. When I was around 18, 19, I put everything I owned, everything that I had, into a red Ford station wagon, and I traveled around America just with everything I owned for around 8-9 months. And I ended up losing that car and losing everything in it when I went to Europe. I remember I gave away my clothes. I gave away everything. And I backpacked around Europe for around 2 years, gaining and losing things again. I've lived below the poverty line my entire life. There's about 6 months that I did not live below the poverty line. I tried to have a real job one time. It was super bad for my health. I became very unhealthy with a regular job. So I'm glad I don't do that anymore. But I was able to acquire a little bit of wealth, and then right before the pandemic began, I started a small business, and we started making a fair amount of money with that small business. And then the pandemic hit, and my small business had been a gym, and we weren't legally allowed to be open. And I again lost everything that I owned. I had a bunch of plants that were growing very beautifully in the space because we had big windows, and there were a bunch of people inside my business breathing out on the plants, and so the plants grew very long and they were just beautiful. And in the pandemic, I had to leave New York City to be safe, and I thought I was going to lose my space. I thought I was going to lose my studio, so I gave away all of these plants, and these plants became this symbol of me just continuously losing everything I own. I still have some plants now, these vines. Here's a real one over here. But I started with the painting in oil of just a big vine plant because I gave them all away. I lost them all. And statistically speaking, the odds of me making it out of poverty are very, very low. It doesn't seem like I will. Most people don't make it out of poverty. And the whole picking ourselves up by the bootstraps is kind of a fallacy. I have a disease. I've consistently been low income. I've had many, many traumatic. Don't have the best mental health. I have been diagnosed with PTSD, and I'm trying to learn how to deal with this trauma. And so this is a painting where I was exploring all of that. I wrote down all of my fears. I wrote down some of them really big. I wrote down some of them really small. I wrote down techniques that kind of help me relax, like breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. I wrote, you might get raped again. I wrote, you might lose everything again. I wrote, I love you, Robin. And it was just important for me to make the biggest painting I've ever made and make it huge and make it just full of everything. In a lot of my work, I use text image when readable text is presented inside an image. And I like this. I like it when you can't quite read exactly what's going on too. And it was nice. And in some of my work, I've made bars of light. And for this one, I made bars of charcoal that I then tried to wash off, which made a lot of the paint more dirty. And every time I roll and unroll it, there's some charcoal dust specks that come off. I used a mop at one point to spread the paint and the charcoal and just everything around. I used cleaning techniques that art historians have used to clean oil paint after I got all the oil paint all dirty with charcoal. There's parts where you can see I've rubbed so hard that I've pulled the oil and the charcoal and everything just back up off the canvas. So it's a very raw, very worked on surface. It's just very textured and has a lot going on. Whenever I look at it, I always go deeper into the depths and just see more of it, which is kind of what loss has been like for me. When I lose something, I'm not sure, I never am sure how much I'm losing. When I've lost all my clothes repeatedly, it has affected my identity, and I now can wear things that I never would have able to wear before because I never am sure of who I am. Now, when I'm making a painting, I don't always have a plan. I know that I need to always have surfaces available to me, so I'm always looking for surfaces that I can work on. I went to the art store to get 10-ounce canvas, which is cheap and what I can work with typically, and they just had a sale on this 72-inch wide canvas, and so I was really excited. I'd never worked on 72 inches wide, and I got some, and I used, I think, a couple gallons of gesso, just making this prepared for anything that I could put on it. And as I first put it on the wall, and then I gessoed it, and as I gessoed it, the canvas shrunk. That's what gesso does. It binds the canvas closer together so that it will protect it and last longer. And it actually shrunk so much that one time I put gesso on it and the whole thing just came out of the wall. So it was so nice to be able to work on something so big. At certain times I worked with it on the wall, rubbing my hands on the wall. At other times I took it down and I used a mop, and I would actually mop the canvas on the ground. And it was just so nice to be so with my body on this big canvas here. This is me. This is the things I've lost. I don't like that I've lost that. I wish sometimes I hadn't, but when I wish I hadn't lost everything, when I want to be a person that hasn't expressed or experienced so much loss, I'm not really looking at myself. I'm looking at someone else who hasn't been through much loss. And unfortunately, I'm not that other person. I am a person who has gone through a lot of loss. I am someone who is losing my ability to move. It's more painful to move today than it was a year ago. I've lost my family. I've lost the protections I deserved. So I've lost concepts and ideas, as well as everything I've owned multiple times. I'm not quite a hoarder, but I do save anything that I think could be useful. Enough money, and I also don't have an able body or an able brain to go on. And this is hard for me. I wish that my brain was more able. I wish I was so wasted with trauma. But when I wish that, I am not acknowledging the truth that my brain is wasted with trauma, and it will take me a while to recover, and that my life is just going to fundamentally look different than other people's lives who haven't had as much loss and trauma. Kind of a hardness, there's a worn outness of this painting. And this is an exploration of loss, exploring the limits of myself. I honestly believe that if I accept the limits of myself, I'm stronger than if I'm pretending I'm stronger than what I actually am. Thanks for letting me share some of my art with you. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to see more of the paintings I've been making. If you want to become a patron of mine, I will provide a link below. I've got a $3 and a $20 option, and it all helps me stay afloat in these crazy times. My name is Charlie Burns. Thank you so much for your support. Do, do, do.